Welcome to 3. I'm Gill Gross with Joel Drucker and Amy Lundy. Post Monte Carlo, it is week 3, technically, of the clay court season. Novak Djokovic is in action in Banja Luka. We also have some Rafa Nadal news, some negative Rafa Nadal news to parse and to discuss. But let's start with Novak, who won his first round match this week against Luca van Assche, this 18-year-old Frenchman who I actually like very much. But right now, it seems that to a lesser extent than Nadal, the focus for Novak is still kind of the elbow, the right elbow thing that seemed to be bothering him last week, was clearly bothering him last week in his loss to Lorenzo Musetti in Monte Carlo. And that's the main thing that I feel like we're tracking this week. Are you in the same place there, Amy?
Well, I got a text from you guys yesterday to tune in to Novak's match, which I wasn't watching live and I was planning on catching up on. So I tuned in and it was in the second set already. And I just didn't think, against conventional wisdom, I just didn't think Novak was playing that poorly. And I could not discern, if he hadn't been wearing a sleeve, I wouldn't have been able to tell you that anything was wrong. Now, I'm sure that, people who follow his every move very closely will be able to say, oh, he was lacking depth on this stroke or that stroke. But I thought the forehand looked pretty good, and I thought he served well in the match.
Yeah, he took off the sleeve and he said that it wasn't much of an issue in that match. So positive news out of the Luca van Assche match. I know he lost the first set and had the sleeve on for the start of the match and said coming into the tournament that it was an issue, where in press after Monte Carlo, he didn't want to get into it. I think because he was in such a bad mood from the loss that he just didn't really want to speak about it. But I thought it was good. I agree. The elbow.
Yet still, clay court season, toothpick by toothpick. I mean, on other surfaces, you sometimes would see a player like Novak playing an 18-year-old who he beat Wawrinka in the prior round, and Novak still got to kind of earn it. That's it. And we had talked, we thought that at least I had, that he would be in reasonable shape when he started, but you still got to work your way towards it. And he was just, I mean, that was an effort. That was a tough effort against the guy on clay, and lots of grinding. Yeah, he played fairly well, but finding form.
Is there some health stuff to kind of be concerned about with Novak, just because of the fact that injuries have been so few and far between for Djokovic? You have the one major elbow issue in 16 and 17. But really, since he came back from that, Djokovic has been kind of injury proof. It's been one of his main assets, I feel. This 2023, for the first time in a while, it seems like there's a lot of kind of getting nicked up and some issues here and there. I mean, it will happen eventually because that's what happens when you get older. What's the concern level that the era of clean bill of health Djokovic is kind of coming to an end?
I don't know if it's ending as much as he's 35. I mean, he's going to be 36 next month, and this is just sounds trite. Time waits for no one. It doesn't mean it's just going to, he has to manage this stuff, and he's probably aware of that. And he's probably, when asked about it, is going to give some very thoughtful comments about it. And then there's also the whole match tough thing that's gone on with him not playing in North America these last couple of years. So how that figures into his sharpness. There's a whole thing being match tough and being sharp and fit from playing, but not too much playing.
Let's put aside the age thing for a while. You guys know me, like one of my mantras is less is more, manage your schedule, take breaks. And I admittedly thought that after the break from not playing Indian Wells in Miami, that Novak would show up like a lean fighting machine. And he, has this little injury and hasn't been playing particularly well, or at least not to his standard. And so I'm now rethinking this a little bit, and I've really been influenced by something that Dominic Thiem said And I really thought Thiem was overplaying for a few years. And he said that after he won the US Open, he just mentally felt a lack of motivation. And so kind of stayed off the court for a few weeks and was kind of just milling around. And then he decided to ramp it back up really quickly. And he went out on the practice court almost as if he had never been gone and got an overuse injury on his wrist. So in other words, he blames himself for not working hard enough during those weeks when he lacked motivation. So that was an interesting point. Okay, the break maybe was good for his mind and his soul, but then if you then go back on the court and pretend that, you didn't take that time off and don't ramp it up slowly, maybe you do predispose yourself to an injury. So, I was thinking about that with regard to Novak, but I mean, look, this guy knows what he's doing.
Yeah, I'm glad you took it there, because that was my thought when I was trying to think about, okay, how do I feel about this elbow thing? What do I make of it? There are two things that you don't want, I think, in all of athletics when it comes to staying healthy. You don't want overuse. You also don't want underuse.
Yeah.
And at the recreational level, I feel like it's a much bigger issue. These pros are always playing, they're always hitting, they never let their bodies go dormant. But I mean, you can't simulate matches, and it's a different feeling out there. Not playing is a good way to get hurt. And especially when it's not a real injury, like it doesn't. Okay, Djokovic didn't tear a tendon, right? This isn't an acute injury. This seems like something that became an issue in, tenderness, soreness, tightness, something like that. Not really an injury. I think it's a perfect explanation to blame that on the fact that he hadn't been playing.
Well, and nothing is going to reveal that more than when you play on the European clay time of year. I mean, the work you have to put in to generate pace, to move your feet, to stay balanced, to say nothing of the opponent doing the same to you, to dealing with the uncertainty of different bounces. I mean, it is the ultimate MRI of where you're at physically and therefore mentally. Let's not even put aside just the mental part about competing and all that, but just physically with dealing with balls and who knows. I mean, and again, Novak is such he's so attuned to many things, but he works on many things and experiments. And there's strings and rackets and all sorts of factors enter into this. And he wants to, again, he wants to make the grand effort, try to win Roland Garros for a third time.
So last year he had the bad loss at Monte Carlo. There, I think, was some illness there, but it just seemed like the cardiovascular health was the biggest issue. And then they went to Belgrade, and it was 1 seed versus 2 seed in the final. Djokovic, Andrei Rublev. Novak just kind of ran out of gas in that match. In fact, completely, and lost the third set 6-love. This week, once again, Djokovic, the 1 seed, Rublev, the 2 seed, Andre now coming off of a Monte Carlo title. I'm fascinated to kind of track this year against last year, because so far it's parallel.
Yeah, I can't believe Andre is playing this tournament. Sorry, Joel. I mean, he wins Monte Carlo and not easily, by the way. It was a long run there. And then he goes to a religious ceremony because he is the godfather of Daniil Medvedev's daughter. Then he races over to play this 250. It's 250, right?
Yeah.
And I assume that he's going to play the double-headed 1000s coming up. Andre, I mean, I know he loves tennis and he lives to compete, but I would have loved to have seen Andre take this week off. That aside, it is good to see him in a field. He really enhances this field that Novak has put himself in. Although I think Novak's probably not even worried about that right now. He's just finding himself on clay.
I think, first of all, I think, I don't know how you guys felt. I was very happy for Rublev. That was his
Yeah.
first match 1,000, and that was a great final. And Rune is a great player too, who he beat in the finals. But I just think, I just like Rublev. I don't, his attitude, the way he goes about doing things. So that was neat. But I think, I wonder if the players are just thinking, look, sign up for these things, play as you do. Just like, look, here's Novak, Monte Carlo playing this week, then the others, and they're 10-day tournaments. So they're kind of like their own version of the Indian Wells Miami configuration. And I think the players think, well, I'm not going to win. Who am I, Rafa? I'm going to win every match I play on these things. So I think they're going to be ample pockets of downtime. But the last thing you want is non-match time. I mean, it'd be interesting to talk to players about what's the best prep, physical, mental. I mean, yeah, you don't want to overplay, but what's going to be? And you don't know if you lose.
Well, yeah, it's a difference this year. I want to highlight that Rome and Madrid, which used to take place over the course of 2 weeks, is now going to take place over the course of a month. I don't think it's that physical, actually, and I think this might be why Andre didn't feel the need to pull out. If you're a seeded player in one of these, you don't play in the first round, and then you get a day off between matches. So you almost have a week off during the first week, because it starts on Wednesday, then you get a bye. So you play your first match Friday or Saturday. It's almost like a week off. So it's going to be interesting to see how those adjustments are made. I agree with you, Joel. And I've heard some interesting comments from some former players who have talked about how some players like a day off in between matches and it helps them. Some players hate it. For some players, it really hurts them having that day off. They like to keep that kind of momentum train going. Obviously, for our three, for Djokovic and Nadal here, they have excelled so much in that day off format that we're used to seeing in the majors.
They've also excelled in the non-day off too.
That's correct.
They can, do anything. But one little caveat, and then I'll let you run with it. The Madrid conditions are just so different, and the bounce there is, I think it's tough on the arm, and it's not, Rome is such a better prep for Roland Garros that if I were going to, not withdraw, but maybe take it a little easier or lower my expectations for a tournament, then Madrid would be the one that I would kind of lower.
If you're top 30, Amy, you can't withdraw.
Well, that's right. That's right. Otherwise, you're going to face penalties these days. That's true.
Yeah. Well, or you could say, face the penalties, just put it on my tab.
True.
And Tsitsipas talked about that, but it's just this interesting kind of calibration. I think as these events expand, I mean, these are 96 fields in Madrid and Rome. We'll see how the players go about managing their time and their energy, and how that even had the implications for Monte Carlo and the other clay court circuit. I mean, the expansion of these events has kind of altered the DNA of the European clay season, and players will learn. And also, as far as the days and day offs, yeah, it depends on who the player is. I mean, how far they go. That's always the players who are used to getting to quarters and 16s, or the players who are in semis, all of that.
Before we move on, are we selling the Djokovic-Musetti match short? We haven't really talked about it. I felt like the quality wasn't all that high. Like, nothing Musetti did. I don't want to say it didn't, impress me. He's good. But I don't think he was extraordinary, and I don't see evidence that this is going to be some launching pad for Musetti, although he had a good win over Cam Norrie this week in Barcelona as well. So maybe he is building something, but I thought it was more Djokovic, first serve not working, forehand not working, and just a very kind of weakened version of Novak in that match.
I think Musetti gets plenty from it. That doesn't mean he puts him on the path to winning the French Open, but it means, like, everyone takes what they get out of these things, right? It's like, it's classic tennis player logic. Like, Novak thinks, well, okay, that's fine. It's Monte Carlo. We got weeks to go. And it's almost as if Monte Carlo is becoming, okay, the acceptable early clay season loss. And then the great win, confidence. Let me see, let me go. And again, for a player like Musetti, 2 semis, let's say this be leading up to Roland Garros, pretty good in a path, doing well. So we'll see. I think for him, the way he plays, and a lot will depend on his draw at Roland Garros, for example. But we'll get to him in a few weeks. But and for Novak, it's like, yeah, that happens. Okay, next.
It's pretty cool how Monte Carlo has become this place where people with one-handed backhands can actually do well. Maybe it has to do with the slowness of the court, but I thought Musetti's backhand held up really well, despite Novak kind of focusing on it. But in the end, it was what you said, Gill. He just wasn't in good form.
Yeah,
here's the question, if I may, just a sec, Gil. It's a question. Which parents do we want to be on behalf of which player? Who's the advocate? Where does the advocacy lie? In the winner or the loser? In the frequent subject of our show, or in another? You see what I mean? It's like you can look at it from either view.
Sure. Well, I mean, we're more Novak's parents than Musetti's parents, if we're being honest.
Musetti is not going to be one of the three. No, all due respect.
I'm talking overall. Our role as tennis commentators. It's like none of us, and we all play. None of us wants to be told, "Oh yeah, you won. Your opponent wasn't playing well."
Agreed. Absolutely. But I also think it's our job to watch the match and to kind of look at what happened there, and not, we don't have an obligation to Lorenzo, to give him, lots of pats on the back, although he deserves pats on the back.
Yeah.
I'm not saying he doesn't, but I'm saying, let's say he didn't, right? It's not, we're nobody's parents, I guess, at the end of the day. For Musetti, emotionally, I think it's massive. Like, the 2021 Roland Garros match was haunting, was I think in a lot of ways traumatic, not just from losing from 2 sets up, but also because of the abuse that he took for retiring in that match. That was a big deal. And I feel like nothing can kind of, I guess, close the book on that and allow him to forget that as much as this Monte Carlo match. I think in that way, it must be very therapeutic. And we saw his reaction, going to his team, hugging everybody like he just won the tournament. So that's all great for him, happy for him. But literally from a tennis level standpoint, all I'm saying is I wasn't like, whoa, Musetti's playing like a top 10 guy. I wasn't there.
Well, I wouldn't say that based on one match anyway. I would say that Musetti won the tournament. Do you see what I mean? It's like, we all know how good pro tennis is, and that these things, those kind of things happen. So it happens. And Novak knows it too, right?
Yes. Okay, Rafa. Bad news, pulled out of Madrid. What he has said in a statement this morning in Spanish. I'm just going to read it. It's been translated for me. The injury was supposed to keep me out 6 to 8 weeks, but I have been out 14. We have followed all the medical advice, but my recovery has not gone as they said it would, and now we find ourselves in a difficult situation. So it was, I think, an expectation that Rafa would actually have a full clay court season after the injury was first sustained. But as Amy has been telling us on the show, it's just not healing as quickly as expected. Amy, anything to add to this?
I really liked Rafa's statement today because he went in as much detail as he possibly could, and spoke directly to the camera and all that, and ended with sending hugs to everybody, which was really sweet. But the funny part in the middle was kind of like, these doctors, they told me 10 weeks and it's been 14. Okay, I wasn't told the truth. And it's just a guy who wants to play tennis, and loves playing tennis this time of year, and just lives and breathes the clay and wants so badly to be out there. Where, if I'm really like boiling it down to brass tacks, and I know, Joel, you don't like to get into the Grand Slam tally and all that, but we're really at an interesting pivot point with regard to the tally, because Novak is not quite in his tip-top form right now, and he's been wearing a sleeve on his elbow. Rafa is obviously a real question mark to even play Roland Garros. And they're tied at 22. And oh, by the way, there's this guy, Carlos Alcaraz, who is amazing right now and is on the up. And there's any number of other players, including like Taylor Fritz, for example, and Andrei Rublev just won on clay. So this is shaping up to be not like Rafa's gonna go and just win another one, but one of the most interesting, compelling clay court seasons that we've had in some time.
Well, that's true because it's so wide open. You have these contenders, and we've known for years that it was going to reach this stage in the Rafael Nadal physicality, the Novak Djokovic, likely to last longer, have more shots to win majors. Yeah, for me, I'm fine with talking about the tally. I just don't believe, as we know, in the whole GOAT, that it necessarily makes one a GOAT more than another. And Novak can maybe look at, he sees a Wimbledon or whatever. But yeah, it is interesting. For example, maybe it'll be Alcaraz or someone else who keeps them at 22, right? Maybe these guys, because as Alcaraz has shown, Alcaraz, I'm pretty sure, he's the first guy to win a slam in that era, young enough to think, hey, we think he could win more. Actually, I was encouraged by that 14 years ago by Del Potro, 14 years ago. But these other guys, and Murray got hit. Murray and Wawrinka got 3 each, pretty good. But it wasn't seeing that they were going to freeze the big 3.
If Alcaraz has a significantly better clay court season than Djokovic, he will be favored going into Roland Garros. Like, the belief that he can win a major is there, and over Rafa as well, because it looks like Rafa will probably. I mean, we can talk about this. First, I just want to say I agree with you, both of you, about this does feel. I feel like RG coming into the year was, this is probably going to be really interesting. Djokovic wins Australia, tied at 22, Nadal's house, Alcaraz, great surface for him. Like, in terms of those 3 guys right now, this is as good as it gets. And at Wimbledon, it starts to get a lot more straightforward for Novak, you would think. It's just the contenders. It isn't there. And the finalist from last year at Wimbledon, Nick Kyrgios, who was dangerous there, getting ahead of myself, but he hasn't played at all this year either.
So to get back to Nadal, at one point I'm thinking Nadal, his only pre-Roland Garros tournament right now can be Rome. And I wonder if he doesn't play Rome, I'm really curious to see how he views if he should play Roland Garros. Because again, I've talked about this for years, that Nadal believes in homework and preparation. And I wonder how he would feel at all levels, besides cleared physically or all these different things, about showing up, not having played a match since January, and having it be his first round match, launch a title defense at Roland Garros. So Rome is going to be really interesting. I mean, see how Nadal is for that.
What do you think, Amy? Does Rafa play? If he can't play Rome, does he play Roland Garros? If he can play Roland Garros, meaning like the hip is healed in that timeline?
It's so many things coming at Rafa right now. Like, okay, this is my house. This is where I know the deal. I know what I'm doing. I can ramrod through. Novak is not in tippy-top form, and there may be something wrong with his elbow. If I don't play, am I missing an opportunity here? That's, secondly, if I do play, could I make things worse? Thirdly, do I want to try to come back and play next year? Because I don't want to end my career not having given Roland Garros one more try. So many factors to consider, so many things coming at him. And the only thing I can do is take him at his word, which is not feeling 100% right now. So therefore, don't know what even next week or tomorrow is going to be like.
Those are great assessments. And I think factored into that is also Nadal's, what I've always thought of, his hyper respect for the game itself and the people who pay money to watch him play, and even his rivals. Like, am I worthy? Am I 100%? Not just because my doctor tells me and because I played a couple practice sets yesterday, but do I have it in me to give 14 days of this kind of tennis?
Yeah, I think, and that's my answer to the question. I think it comes down to on the practice court, and again, maybe he plays Rome, but we're assuming he doesn't in this hypothetical. On the practice court, do I feel like my level is Roland Garros winning level? And if it can get there, I think he plays. But if it's not, I don't think he enters just to give it a go. If he doesn't fully believe that he can win the title, I don't think he's playing.
I agree. That's right. So I guess right. So we're conjecturing on we're in the lot of interesting speculation. But I think Amy, you illuminated the many things going on around Nadal. A lot of different thoughts, and I guess what we'll have to see. We'll obviously pay attention, and I think we would like him to play Rome. That'd be really nice.
Yeah.
That would really help. That would help provide the path towards the other answer. Because this isn't the grass season where many players have shown up at Wimbledon and gone on to win Wimbledon.
Right. It's also like, it's crazy. Joel, I guess you know this, Amy. I don't know if you know this, but I had an abductor injury right around the time Rafa got his abductor injury. But mine was before, and it took way longer to heal than I expected, like way longer. And I don't put in the work like Rafa. Rafa's rehabbing every day. I'm like eating potato chips and hoping it gets better. So there's a big difference there. But it's just weird for me to think about right now. It's kind of messing with my brain because it was a weird thing that's happened to me this year, is hurting the same thing as Rafa and having a somewhat similar experience with it.
You're taking kind of a chip in charge approach, Gill. And then, it's funny. And I've had a ankle injury. And so Gill and I are going to have a little hit next Tuesday and see which of us can give a reasonable 27 minutes of tennis.
Well, be careful out there, you guys. Don't.
Yeah, no one's
Just don't, whatever you do, don't go to pickleball.
Let's end on a fun one. We won't, Amy. Don't worry. Let's end on a fun one. Djokovic in his press conference recently said that he would coach Nick Kyrgios. He would have to. It would cost a lot, so he's going to charge a lot. He would do it, and his prediction is that if he coached Nick, that Nick would win 5 major titles.
So does that imply that Novak would be retired at such point?
That's unclear.
Or would the slams come at Novak's expense?
Isn't that a conflict of interest if he's coaching him and playing him in the final of a slam? I don't know. I love it.
These days, actually, it's a good question. Given what coaching is, I don't know. Could he yell across the court to him? Think about it, you're coaching your opponent. Hey, it's his backhand more.
Well, if there's anyone who could handle that job, it would have to be Novak, because I can't really think of another person on the planet who could be Kyrgios's coach. But I would pay to see that, like the pay-per-view and all that. And I would love it if they would mic up Novak. That would be cool.
So no response from Kyrgios yet. That's interesting. And so I guess nothing from Kyrgios about that, because usually he's pretty quick to reply whenever around these things. So
this was a fun thing that was, cool to kick around. But I actually kind of have a theory that Novak kind of buddying up with Nick, I actually kind of think it's a strategy. And I'm not usually like this in terms of reading into stuff to this level, but Kyrgios hasn't historically played his friends very well.
No.
Kokkinakis, Murray, like people he likes, he doesn't really compete against them all that well. And for a period of time, Nick communicated a lot of disdain for Novak. And I feel like Djokovic has killed him with kindness here. And there might be a competitive edge for Novak in doing that.
I totally sympathize with someone who does not play their friends well, because that's me. I hate playing my friends. I would rather play a total stranger. Please, Joel, I know you and I are opposite on that. But I can understand how Nick feels that way. And therefore, Gill, good call. I do think Novak knows what he's doing, and I would be surprised actually if Kyrgios ever beat Novak in any scenario after this.
Wow, that's really interesting. I mean, see, like, yeah, we've talked about this before. Like I said, oh, they're my friends. That's my point. We agree to compete for a while. Sometimes it's tough for me with people I've never met because aspects of how I play get people angry, and I've had numerous incidents where the opponents end up it's this discord. And I don't cheat, I don't trash talk. It's just with the tennis, but things happen, and so that gets a little trickier. But I guess it's interesting. It's interesting how it goes with different people and what the relationship is.
Yeah. Well, Joel, Jimmy Connor's biographer, wasn't a big part of Jimmy's motivation is that he wanted to hate his opponent, and that he struggled when there was not that disdain.
Yeah, mostly Connors was taught that to hate the opponent, to build up a hatred for him, and figure out what the thing was that you really most hated in him, and that was going to be kind of like the match that was going to spark the fire to compete. Besides the skills and just desire to win, but that was going to be another part of the fire. And then he was friends with Nastasi, who was a little older and a little bit of a mentor when he first started, so that kind of put him off. And then Bjorn Borg, who gave nothing, who's the ultimate poker face player. Connors couldn't find a way in to hate him, but he could find other forms of motivation. Yeah, but that was a big part for Connors to fuel that hatred, those tiger juices, as his mother referred to them, to really, this guy, yeah.
Yeah. So someone should have thought of that. Someone should have been like, Jimmy, I'll coach you. I love you. You're the best. That would have been a good strategy.
Let me get to know you. Yeah.
That wouldn't have happened.
All right. That'll do it for this episode of 3. Remember, we're available on all podcast platforms. We appreciate it if you leave a rating and a review on Apple and Spotify. And if you're watching on YouTube, like, comment, and subscribe. We'll see you next time on the next episode of 3.